They bury the evidence. We dig it up. For over 150 years, archaeological excavations across America have yielded reports that challenge our understanding of prehistoric human populations. 7-foot skeletons, 8-foot remains, even 12-foot claims documented in official reports. In case after case, these discoveries were sent to one destination, the Smithsonian Institution. Today, we investigate what happened to this evidence. This is the Artifacts Detective, and today we're examining the Smithsonian Giant Skeleton Archaeological Files. Welcome to the Artifacts Detective, where we investigate history's greatest mysteries through archaeological evidence. I'm your host, and today we're examining one of American archaeology's most persistent mysteries: the documented discoveries of unusually large human skeletal remains and their subsequent disappearance from the archaeological record. What we'll investigate today: archaeological evidence from the Smithsonian's own Bureau of Ethnology reports, primary source documentation from 19th century excavations, the role of curator Aleš Hrdlička in reshaping the narrative, recent archaeological findings that shed new light on this mystery. But first, let me show you something extraordinary from the archaeological record. The story begins with the Great Mound excavation period of the 1800s. Across North America, thousands of ancient burial mounds dotted the landscape, monuments to sophisticated prehistoric cultures. As American expansion pushed westward, these mounds were systematically excavated. Between 1848 and 1890, an estimated 200,000 mounds were documented across the eastern United States. These earthworks represented centuries of indigenous construction containing countless burials, artifacts, and cultural treasures, and the excavators began reporting something unexpected. Let's examine the primary sources. According to the Smithsonian's own annual report of 1873, archaeologists documented a skull with a 36-inch circumference discovered in Adena, Illinois. For context, the average human skull measures 21 to 23 inches in circumference. This represents a significant deviation from normal human parameters. The discovery at Adena wasn't isolated. The same report documented similar findings across multiple states. In Sac County, Iowa, mounds yielded skeletons of very large proportions. In Pike County, Illinois, excavators reported finding bones of unusual thickness and length. These weren't casual observations. They were official measurements recorded by Smithsonian field agents using the best measurement tools available at the time. The Smithsonian's Bureau of Ethnology, established to document Native American cultures, became the central repository for archaeological finds. Their own reports document at least 17 skeletons exceeding 7 feet in height. This number only represents the most extreme cases. Dozens more measured between 6.5 and 7 feet, still notably above the average height for the period. The Bureau's methodology was systematic. Field agents were provided with detailed instructions for excavation, measurement, and preservation. They were required to document not just the skeletal remains, but also associated artifacts, burial positions, and mound construction techniques. Photographs were taken when possible, and detailed drawings were made of significant finds. This attention to detail makes their reports particularly valuable for our investigation. In 1883, the Smithsonian dispatched Professors P.W. Norris and Cyrus Thomas to excavate 50 mounds in West Virginia. Their official report, preserved in the Smithsonian archives, contains remarkable documentation. The West Virginia expedition was one of the most extensive archaeological undertakings of its era. The team employed local workers, surveyors, and even a photographer to document their findings. They established a field laboratory for preliminary analysis and shipped regular reports back to Washington. From their field notes, the principal personage, a gigantic human skeleton, 7 feet 6 inches in length and 19 inches between the shoulders. This individual was found with heavy copper bracelets and surrounded by 10 other skeletons in a circular arrangement, indicating high status within the community. The copper artifacts showed sophisticated metalwork requiring advanced techniques. Each bracelet weighed over 3 pounds and featured intricate designs. Similar artifacts have been traced to mining operations in the Great Lakes region, suggesting extensive trade networks spanning hundreds of miles. The burial arrangement itself tells a fascinating story. The circular pattern, with the largest skeleton at the center, mirrors burial practices documented in other high-status mound builder sites. The surrounding skeletons were positioned with their feet pointing toward the central figure, suggesting reverence or spiritual significance. The 12th annual report of the Bureau of Ethnology contains multiple similar accounts. A skeleton between 7 and 8 feet from a mound near Chillicothe, Ohio. A 7 feet 3 inches individual with unusually thick bones from Tennessee. Multiple reports of crania exceeding normal proportions from sites across the Midwest. Femur bones of such length that they suggested heights approaching 8 feet. These measurements were taken using standard archaeological protocols of the era. The field agents used measuring tapes, calipers, and comparative anatomy techniques. While not as precise as modern methods, they were consistent enough to establish clear patterns across multiple sites. These weren't amateur treasure hunters. These were official Smithsonian expeditions using the best archaeological methods available at the time. The Smithsonian's own records clearly document these discoveries. But this is where the investigation takes an unexpected turn. Our investigation has uncovered over 1,000 documented reports between 1845 and 1920. The geographic distribution reveals intriguing patterns. The highest concentration appears along the Mississippi River Valley, particularly in Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri. Secondary clusters emerge in the Ohio Valley and Tennessee River region. Isolated reports come from as far away as California, Nevada, and New York. This distribution correlates with major mound-building cultures, suggesting these weren't random anomalies, but potentially characteristic of specific populations. The question becomes, what distinguished these populations from their neighbors? The Adena culture, 800 BCE to 100 CE, built elaborate burial mounds throughout the Ohio Valley. According to archaeological studies published in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology, the Adena people were notably robust, with strong bone structure and powerful musculature. The Adena practiced artificial cranial deformation, creating distinctive skull shapes that have sometimes been misinterpreted by later observers. Their diet was rich in protein from hunting and gathering, which may have contributed to their physical development. But these factors alone don't fully explain the extreme measurements recorded in some excavations. Don Dragu of the Carnegie Museum, excavating the Cresap Mound in 1958, documented burial 54. When measured in the tomb, his length was approximately 7.04 feet. All the long bones were heavy and possessed marked eminences for the attachment of muscles. Dragu's excavation employed modern archaeological techniques, including stratigraphy, careful documentation, and photographic evidence. His team used precision instruments and followed strict protocols. His findings weren't based on hasty field measurements, but careful laboratory analysis conducted over several months. The skeletal analysis revealed not just height, but overall robustness. The bone density was exceptional, the muscle attachment points were pronounced, and the joints showed adaptations for bearing significant weight. This individual wasn't just tall, but powerfully built. Archaeologists Webb and Snow, in their comprehensive study of Adena sites, documented the remains of Burial 40 is one of the largest known to Adena. The skull-foot field measurement is 84 inches, 7 feet. Webb and Snow's work represented a new generation of scientific archaeology. They applied statistical analysis to their findings, comparing measurements across multiple sites. Their database included over 200 Adena burials, making their identification of outliers particularly significant. The artifacts associated with these larger individuals often included exotic materials: copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, mica from the Carolinas, and obsidian from the Rocky Mountains. This suggests they weren't just physically distinctive, but held special status within their communities, possibly as traders, warriors, or spiritual leaders. In 1913, German naturalist Dr. A.W. Fürsteanu reported discovering an 8-foot skeleton on Catalina Island, complete with artifacts including mortars and pestles. The discovery occurred during hotel construction, limiting archaeological documentation, but multiple witnesses corroborated the find. Amateur archaeologist Ralph Glidden later conducted extensive excavations on Catalina, claiming to have found multiple skeletons exceeding normal height. Smithsonian officials visited his collection, documented in contemporary newspapers, before it was dispersed. Glidden maintained a museum displaying his finds for over 20 years. The Los Angeles Times reported on Glidden's collection multiple times between 1920 and 1950. These weren't sensationalist tabloid stories, but straightforward news reports including quotes from visiting scientists and detailed descriptions of the artifacts. Photographs from the period show Glidden with skeletal remains that appear notably large, though precise measurements are difficult to verify from images alone. In Nevada's Lovelock cave, excavations revealed intriguing evidence. The local Paiute people maintain oral traditions of the Si-Te-Cah, described as a distinct population of unusual height with reddish hair. The Lovelock cave excavations of 1911 to 1912 and 1924 were conducted by the University of California and the Nevada State Museum. The cave yielded thousands of artifacts, including sophisticated duck decoys, woven baskets, and tools. While the Smithsonian received artifacts from this site, the current location of the skeletal remains is undocumented in their public archives. The mystery deepens when we examine the chain of custody. Shipping records show artifacts sent to Washington, but skeletal materials vanish from documentation upon arrival. Accession numbers are assigned, but subsequent catalogue entries are missing. This pattern repeats across dozens of excavations from multiple states. In 1903, Aleš Hrdlička became curator of physical anthropology at the Smithsonian. His influence would fundamentally reshape how these discoveries were interpreted. Hrdlička, a Czech immigrant, brought European scientific methods to American anthropology. He believed firmly in a linear model of human evolution that left little room for variation or anomalies. His personal correspondence, preserved in the Smithsonian archives, reveals a man determined to establish anthropology as a rigorous science, viewing reports of giant skeletons as embarrassments to the field. In 1934, Hrdlička published his systematic review, attributing the reports to measurement errors by untrained excavators, misidentification of faunal remains, the psychological tendency to exaggerate discoveries, poor preservation leading to bone distortion. Hrdlička's critique had merit in many cases. He demonstrated how femur length could be overestimated when bones were measured in situ. He showed how decomposition could cause bones to separate, leading to inflated height estimates. However, his blanket dismissal seems problematic when applied to reports from trained professionals with multiple witnesses. Hrdlička noted receiving reports of giant skeletons 2 or 3 times per month, approximately 30 reports annually for over 30 years. That's nearly 1,000 reports during his tenure. Even if 90% were misidentifications, the remaining 10% represent significant anomalous discoveries worthy of investigation. Many reports came from trained professionals. Thomas Wilson, curator of prehistoric anthropology at the Smithsonian; Byron Cummings, dean of Southwestern Archaeology at University of Arizona; W.J. Holland, curator of the Carnegie Museum. These weren't fringe figures, but leaders in their field. Wilson's reports included precise measurements, photographs, and comparative analyses. His documentation of a skeleton found in Minnesota included X-rays, cutting-edge technology for the 1890s. The skeleton measured 7 feet 8 inches, with proportionally large bones throughout. Our investigation reveals a consistent pattern. Discovery reported by excavators with measurements and descriptions. Remains sent to Smithsonian or major museums with documentation. No subsequent publication or display of the specific specimens. Current location unknown, despite detailed shipping records. This pattern extends beyond the Smithsonian. Major museums in Philadelphia, Chicago, and New York show similar gaps in their documentation. Accession records from the period show numerous entries for large or unusual skeletal remains that cannot be matched to current collections. One well-documented case involves excavation near Zanesville, Ohio in 1879. The local historical society maintains correspondence with the Smithsonian, including detailed shipping manifests listing one skeleton of unusual size, approximately 7.5 feet. Yet no record exists in current Smithsonian catalogues. The 1990 NAGPRA legislation required repatriation of Native American remains. However, many of these earlier discoveries had already vanished from the accessible record, making repatriation impossible. The archaeological evidence presents a complex picture, but recent developments add another layer to this mystery. In 2020, archaeologist Donald Bull compiled historical reports for analysis. He analyzed over 500 accounts, cross-referencing newspaper reports with scientific publications and museum records. His methodology included visiting reported sites and examining surviving documentation in local archives. His conclusions were nuanced. While many reports showed clear evidence of exaggeration or misidentification, a subset of approximately 60 cases demonstrated consistent measurements and multiple verification sources deserving further investigation. These cases shared common features: professional excavators, multiple witnesses, photographic evidence, and associated artifacts confirming human burial. Modern osteological analysis provides tools unavailable to early excavators. Precise measurement protocols with error margins under 1%, understanding of taphonomic processes affecting bone preservation, recognition of pathological conditions causing gigantism, DNA analysis to identify genetic anomalies. Today's anthropologists can determine height from partial skeletons with remarkable accuracy. These tools could definitively resolve questions about anomalous remains, if the remains could be located. The Smithsonian's National Anthropological Archives contain over 20,000 cubic feet of field notes and hundreds of thousands of photographs. Recent digitization efforts have made portions accessible online, yet searches for specific giant skeleton reports often lead to dead ends. References appear in indices, but actual documents are missing or restricted. Current physical anthropology recognizes that pathological gigantism occurs in human populations. Robert Wadlow reached 8 feet 11 inches due to pituitary gigantism. Angus MacAskill stood 7 feet 9 inches without any pathological condition. Archaeological evidence shows some prehistoric populations were indeed taller than modern descendants. The evidence we've examined raises profound questions about the archaeological record. What conclusions can we draw from this investigation? Let's examine what the archaeological evidence reveals. Documentary evidence. The Smithsonian's own publications contain numerous references to unusual skeletal discoveries. Annual reports, field notes, correspondence, and photographs create a compelling archive that cannot be dismissed as mere folklore. Professional testimony. Respected archaeologists and curators documented these findings. When multiple professionals independently report similar discoveries across decades and regions, their testimony deserves serious consideration. Pattern recognition. A consistent pattern of discoveries, followed by disappearance from the public record, suggests systemic issues rather than isolated incidents. Whether through poor curation, deliberate removal, or natural deterioration, significant evidence has been lost. Cultural context. These discoveries occurred during archaeology's transformation from antiquarianism to science. Paradigm shifts often involve rejecting earlier observations that don't fit new theories. The question becomes, what valid observations were discarded in this process? Critical questions remain. Why do early Smithsonian reports contain detailed documentation of these discoveries? What happened to the physical evidence documented in these reports? How do we reconcile historical documentation with current understanding? What role did changing scientific paradigms play in reinterpreting evidence? In 2014, false claims circulated that the Smithsonian admitted to destroying evidence. Our investigation found these originated from satirical sources with no archaeological basis. This hoax did significant damage to legitimate research by allowing institutions to dismiss all inquiries as conspiracy theories. However, this hoax obscures real archaeological questions raised by historical documentation. The story isn't about cover-ups, but how evidence is collected, interpreted, and preserved. It's about whose observations are valued and whose are dismissed. Today, advanced archaeological methods could resolve these questions. Ground-penetrating radar, DNA analysis, and isotope studies could provide definitive answers. Yet physical evidence from 19th century reports remains largely inaccessible. Indigenous oral traditions across North America include accounts of populations with unusual physical characteristics. The Cherokee speak of moon-eyed people. The Paiute describe the Si-Te-Cah. The Choctaw mention the Nahulo. These aren't mythological beings, but remembered populations with specific characteristics, preserved through generations of storytelling. The investigation suggests several possibilities. Greater morphological diversity in prehistoric populations than currently recognized. Systematic biases in evidence collection and preservation. Need for renewed examination of historical collections. Questions about institutional gatekeeping of controversial evidence. Human diversity in the past may have exceeded today's range. The fossil record shows our ancestors included many variants: Neanderthals, Denisovans, Floresiensis. Isolated populations can develop distinctive characteristics over time. Why assume prehistoric America had less diversity? Modern archaeological projects continue uncovering evidence about prehistoric populations. Recent discoveries challenge assumptions. Kennewick Man showed Paleo-Indians didn't match expected categories. Genetic studies reveal multiple migration waves with distinct populations. Spirit Caveman demonstrated the complexity of early American populations. The artifacts don't lie. The evidence demands investigation. And what we've uncovered today suggests that the full story of prehistoric human diversity in the Americas remains to be written. This investigation reveals more questions than answers. The historical documentation is too extensive to dismiss entirely, yet physical evidence remains frustratingly elusive. We're left with an archaeological mystery challenging our understanding of the past, an institution's role in preserving or obscuring evidence. The search for truth requires examining all evidence, especially that which challenges assumptions. Whether these reports represent misidentifications, exaggerations, or genuine discoveries of unusual populations, they deserve serious scientific investigation, not dismissal or ridicule. What do you think this evidence reveals? Have you encountered similar archaeological mysteries in your research? Share your findings in the comments below. For more archaeological investigations like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Uncover more ancient mysteries, follow the Artifacts Detective and join the investigation.